How do you organize absolutely everything and anything? Well, there's a latch for that. Good day, everyone. Today we are talking about organizing and systems. LATCH stands for location, alphabet, time, category, and hierarchy. Now, it was developed by Richard Saul Wurman, and you would say to me, well, I have never heard of this person, why should I believe you? And I would respond and say, have you ever heard of TED Talks? Richard freaking invented TED Talks. He also developed the term latch in 1989 in his book, Information Anxiety. So, when you look at data sets or information or knowledge bases and all those sorts of things, you will be able to categorize all your information based on commonalities. And latch is that system that you actually categorize stuff, and you may not even know it. If you can figure out the interplay and relationships between all of your information, you can then make it more accessible. Latch is actually a really good way to do that, and I'm surprised more people don't talk about it. It's like doing math on a calculator, but not understanding what simple arithmetic with a pencil and paper actually is. Richard built on his work from Information Anxiety and published it in another book called Information Architects in 1996. I actually happen to have copies of both books, so let's go through them and see what Richard was talking about. So, Information Architects. Here we go, let's jump into it. First example that I have is around locations and a map. This is a map of New York and looking at the population densities. And it's something actually that's pretty easy to achieve. You could look at the population densities and maybe do some color mapping here, but if you notice, they've actually done that with only one color. And so we can see using these red circles, they are able to demonstrate higher population densities in New York, especially around Central Park there. And then as you look at the outlying boroughs and that sort of stuff, population densities decreasing. So very effective way to organize items by location, but in this case they're doing it with minimal color, so effective to see. Another good example, let's look at some actual real maps. So this is the map of Boston. We have, looking at the eastern seaboard, we have Boston and the outlying areas, and then we have the city and downtown core. And looking at locations and the level of detail that you dive into is critically important here. So if we want to talk about Boston, but we are looking just at a picture of the entire Earth, well, that isn't very effective. So understanding the scale of what you're talking about, especially with location, really, really good thing to do. Some more examples here. Let's look at some other maps, but something like this. Now, in terms of location, this is still a map, but rather than prioritizing the physical and spatial locations, we are actually prioritizing the network that is created. And so this is actually the map of the Berlin subway. And with this, this does not overlay perfectly with the actual physical map of Berlin, but this is a very effective way to show how to show all of the subway networks within Berlin and transit networks within Berlin, and allow people to navigate them easily. Now, this concept and notion of not overlaying this map exactly with the physical map, this is actually something that was just more recently done. This is not this is a pretty new concept, and so really, really effective way to maybe use location to categorize things, but the scale of what you're doing it is something you can play with. So, example here of categories is looking at the plot diagram of Huckleberry Finn, and rather than looking at maybe the timelines of the story, what progressed, but this is actually looking at categories by the relationships. So who was related to who did what to who. Another way to look at categories is something like a dictionary, and typically we are used to, a definition and then just a big blurb. But if you take the opportunities to maybe categorize your work, you can then make it far more accessible. And so if I was trying to find out, okay, well, what's the definition of watch, but with respect to it being something on my wrist, I can find that far more easy in a label type definition as opposed to just a blocked definition. So again, understanding the context of those categories is very, very helpful for you to find information that much faster. Another example we have here around categorization is some posters, and so these are about boats, and we're categorizing information and using kind of sections of our posters to be able to convey different things. So with the America's Cup boats, they're trying to outline not only the different parts of the boat, but the race route that they have to take, where the actual courses are, how sailing works, and they're able to collect and assemble huge amounts of information from different sources effectively. Same thing here with this aircraft carrier. So looking at how does the catapult actually work? What does the cutaway of the ship look like? What does that carrier group look like? And when this book was published back in the 1990s, where were they fighting? Another good example that we have is around time. And so we have two production lines here, one in red, one in blue, and this is comparing those two production lines. So the first one being kind of some older styles of production where they have some ideas, and then you have kind of a conventional production line and some new age production ideas where you have kind of simultaneous engineering and prototyping taking place, quality assurance is far higher, and different realms around supply chains. So with the way that this information is displayed, this isn't actually a physical manifestation of those supply chains. This is more figurative, but they're using the time scale of the entire process to convey the information that they are trying to explain. Another good example around hierarchy is something like this. Tallest mountains in the world, and going down from there. Longest rivers in the world, and going down from there. And then also subcategories as well. So we can see that Everest, is definitely the tallest mountain in Asia, but what are the tallest mountains in North America, or Antarctica, or Europe? So really, really good way using hierarchy as your commonality to be able to effectively show a bunch of information. Another good example around hierarchy, our solar system. Now this graphic actually achieves two types of categorization. We have our hierarchies here and our physical relationships between the sun being the largest body in our solar system, going down from there and getting a spatial understanding of those hierarchies as well. And then we also have a timescale around our march into space and the various space programs that took place. So being able to achieve kind of two types of categorization on one chart, great to see. So another example that we have here is Web 1.0. Oh my God. So this is looking at a website, and in this they are trying to map out how you could potentially navigate and click through a website, but showing this in kind of a time scale form. A lot of the theory around navigation for our websites today we just completely take for granted, but this is how they actually started to try to map this out and conceptualize this so it actually works effectively. So if you have a website, why don't you try and categorize it out on how people can potentially navigate through the website, and I'd be interested to see how you could actually potentially jump from one area of your website to the other, and how easily that can happen, or how you can allow people to intentionally jump when you feel that the path of information kind of leads over to another area there. Another really good example that I have for you in this book in terms of alphabet is the index. And so with this book and many others, you have an index, and this categorizes information from A to Z. Very, very effective way to do that. So if you're looking for something specific with respect to this book, you can actually look that up and be able to find it and figure out, well, which page number is that on. So Richard's first book was Information Anxiety, and in here I actually have a very wonderful example I want to share with you around LATCH. So best example that I found is around dogs. Now please forgive the Web 1.0 bitmap graphics of here, but in this picture here in these graphics, we're trying to show all the different types of dogs that are out there and then how you could potentially categorize them. So in this example here, we take these dogs and we say, well, if we were to organize them alphabetically, we have from A to Z the different names of the dogs. If we were to organize them by categories, we could organize them by country of origin. So multiple dogs being bred in England or Germany and then other countries there. We could organize them by time, so looking at when those dogs and those breeds were officially recognized by the American Kennel Club in chronological order. We could organize them by their weight on average from smallest to largest, their height from smallest to largest, using hierarchy principles. We could categorize them by different breeds as well, or their categories, so the hounds or the toy dogs. So this is using specific categories to address those dogs. So here we have examples of all the different ways you could actually categorize information, and we're literally just looking at different breeds of dogs. The key to make our information systems accessible is to find the commonalities and relationships. And LATCH is a really good way to do that. So the key to all of this, as stated by Richard, is having information doesn't tell us what we need to know. It leaves us inundated with facts, but starving for understanding. So when you're collecting information for your knowledge bases and your digital second brains and those sorts of strategies, we're putting tons and tons of information into systems maybe like Evernote or Notion or Roam or SharePoint or Google Drives. So we use those systems to build our digital brains, but if we can't find the relationships and commonalities between that information, we can't then easily recall it. And all we become is digital hoarders. So having this information hopefully will add some perspective when you are setting up data systems or information systems or your digital brains. And hopefully when you're collecting your content and you're trying to figure out ways to deal with it, you can latch it. Thank you so much, everyone. Like that smash button, subscribe, do all those wonderful things. I'd love to see your comments down below, and we will see you in the next video. Bye.